Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Disorganized Religion podcast, or the
DERP.
DRP. DaShawn likes to call it DERP. It's growing on me. I'll go with it. Hashtag DERP. Either way, we're glad for you guys to be joining us today. We appreciate both of our listeners here at the DRP. Thanks for listening. I am joined, of course, by my partners in crime.
Eric Johnson.
And DaShawn Jones.
DaShawn joins us once again from the remote confines of Washington, D.C., where he is away at school. And I understand that you actually braved the freezing cold temperatures to be a fan of the hometown team up in D.C. yesterday.
I did. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers got to come out and play the Washington football team because there's nothing more creative than that. And temperatures were close to about 40 degrees, and I was sitting at the very top of the stadium. And so it was just really cold up there. Yeah, and then they lost. So I really felt like I just, I got the short end of the stick yesterday.
Did you show out? Did you have the shirt, the hat, the Bucs stuff on, or were you flying under the radar?
I did have on a Bucs shirt, and I did cover it up about halfway through, primarily because I was cold, but primarily
not because of shame, because of weather.
Also shame. It was a little bit of both.
Does Washington have a reputation for being a stadium where you can't wear opposing players or opposing team gear?
I don't think they have that reputation, but they're definitely not friendly people.
Not like Philadelphia, where if you wear an opposing team's jersey, you can get. Yeah. So how to go with your team then, Matt?
Well, thank you for asking, Eric Johnson. In fact, the Philadelphia Eagles dominated the Denver Broncos yesterday in dramatic fashion. It was great, which was a fitting finish to my weekend, in which Florida State also won over Miami. So
how many wins?
Nothing wrong with FSU beating Miami. Those are good days. So
how many wins?
The Bucs would help me out a little bit if they would have beaten Washington to give the Eagles a little oomph in the standings there. So thanks for nothing, hometown team.
Yeah, the Bucs
anyway.
Didn't lose. They didn't play. They just looked awful all around. It
started in the very first quarter. They were horrible. Sorry.
Well, I missed it. I had it on for a little bit in between the charge conferences that I was doing yesterday. I had a bunch of fun. Went to our charge conference, and then did charge conference for another church. I was the presiding elder of another church's conference. And then my soccer game last night was at 9:00. I was wiped out.
Wow, long day.
Yeah. And we lost. But not because of me. I gotta say, I had some great saves, but all their goals were scored on breakaways. It was me against the one person, and frankly, if they don't score on that, that's on them. So
DaShawn, I see the hashtag decorate DaShawn is bearing some fruit. There's like 3 things in the back.
Let's see. I want to picked up some traction. We've got a nice Howard University Bison banner there. I've placed it opposite my bed so that when I wake up, I'm reminded exactly who I am.
So the mascot of Howard is the bison?
Yeah,
it is the bison.
How does Howard? Are there a lot of bison in DC?
There are no bison in DC except for the National Zoo.
So how did they become the bison? What's the story?
I don't know. I've actually tried to figure it out, and I got nothing.
That opens up a lot of possibilities then, because we were talking before about what the possible future name of the Washington former Redskins, now Washington football team, is going to be called. But if all you have to do is have the animal in the zoo there, I mean, you could be anything.
Uh, I've been to the
Lions,
zoo,
tigers, bears.
everything. Oh,
Of course, there are lions already and bears. Are there NFL tigers?
there
No.
are.
Yeah, so you have that going for you. All kinds of birds. Well, the Eagles and Falcons and Cardinals are taken. I don't know. Anyway, I mean, they just walk through the zoo in Washington D.C. and just pick something.
Just
I
pick
didn't
something.
realize you'd have to like be known for that animal. The bison's a strong pick. I went to was it Yellowstone a couple of years ago, and this huge herd of bison came, and traffic was stopped. And if you mess with one, like it could really chuck you a ways. Not that I experienced that. There was a training video, or they kept showing this video and all the different stops of someone getting thrown by a bison. So
Warning, don't do this.
yeah. So do they play that video at bison games, DaShawn, where someone's being
They
gored
don't.
or
I'm gonna recommend that to like somebody's PR team because I think that would be great.
do it? It's dramatic. It makes you not want to mess with them. So stuff. Hey, so I brought you guys a gift. You ready? I really floundered on the dad jokes last time I tried, but I'm feeling good now.
Oh no.
So you guys watch The Office, right?
I do. I love it.
Of course.
Yeah, great. So why did Dwight Schrute sell his farm and become a DJ? Because he had sick beats.
Sorry, I should not have laughed.
You should have, because that's funny. That's what you do when something's funny. You laugh. Let it be known, car listener, that DaShawn and Eric are both laughing. They're trying to be quiet about it, but they both thought that was funny.
Try to
So,
laugh without
oh,
it.
this one.
Picked up on
I only get sick on weekdays. I seem to have a weakened immune system.
Yeah.
Okay, no laughing on that one. All right, fair enough. Fair enough. What do you call a line of people waiting to get a haircut?
Something buzz.
A barbecue.
Uh, uh, uh. What's funny is the try. You're trying really hard, Matt.
I peaked early. Is what happened. But I do have dating advice for you, DaShawn. One of these is good dating advice. If you're gonna meet a girl at the gym to get some exercise together, but if you invite her to meet you at the gym and she does not show up, you guys might not work out.
Haha.
Oh,
I'll give you that one.
no, don't do that, Deshaun.
But
That's better than any of the other dating advice
thank
that I've
you,
gotten.
thank you. Good night.
We got to find him a new joke website to pull these from.
I collect them. Whenever I come upon them, I'm like, ooh, nice. Saving that for Eric and DaShawn. They're gonna love it. Love it. Oh, by the way, whichever of you stole my copy of Microsoft Office, I will find you. You have my word.
All right.
So recently, Eric discovered a poll that was taken
Yeah,
to save this
let's switch.
mercifully. Eric recently found a poll that that disturbed us. Eric, I'll let you go ahead and intro the unfortunate stats that you uncovered.
Okay. So I ran across a survey of young people, ages 13 to 25. They surveyed a little over 10,000 of those folks. And they asked them a range of contemporary social issues. So, and the question was, how much do you care about this particular issue? And then they asked, how much do you believe that your faith community, the one that you belong to or don't belong to, cares about that issue? And so across, I'll quote from the piece here. It says, across the range of contemporary social issues that many young people say they care about, they found that the same young people perceived that Christian churches and other faith groups cared far less about those issues. And the disparities were in double digits. So some of the issues they asked them about were LGBTQA rights, gender equity, immigration rights, income inequality, disability rights, environmental causes, racial justice, Black Lives Matter, guns reform. So things like that. And so the question I have when I came away with that was, um, how do what is the how do we stay involved with young people so that they believe that their faith community is a place where they can um, they can engage on these sorts of issues, and that the church does care about these issues.
DaShawn, what's wrong with young people? Eric and I were young people like 38 years ago, but it's more fresh to you. What's your take on this?
So what's wrong with us? I don't know. um,
That's a podcast for another day.
Right. I'm here on college campus, and so that age range is kind of widely represented here, and we have a middle school on campus as well, so like it's really represented. Um, and I think it's a consensus among a lot of young people that the church, maybe even if the church doesn't care about it, I think that just things aren't talked about in church, and so I think there's not enough dialogue around issues. And I think that's something that a lot of young people have said, especially even I've heard it a lot around issues of relationships and things of that nature and intimacy. Like the church doesn't, like the church says, don't do this, don't do that, but then like there's nothing else outside of the do's and don'ts, and nothing about how to navigate kind of nuanced situations. So I think it's just, the church isn't talking enough about certain things to that demographic.
That is the $1 zillion word, is nuance. There seems to be zero stomach anymore for us to hear a person's point of view and give them some credit for possibly not just falling into the caricature of the people that are on one side or the other, but to think they actually may have some nuance to their ideas and thoughts and opinions. We're really incapable of that, or I mean, we don't really show it anyway in the public space. It's easier to get yourself more attention if you are inflammatory and take a side and make sweeping statements about people who disagree with you. And really, I mean, we create caricatures of each other that are entirely unhelpful. I would say, and just to speak, I mean, I'll be frank. These topics scare me as a preacher in a church, right? And I'll own that. Sometimes when I've gotten into these things, I get a lot of pushback about getting into politics during a sermon, or bringing politics into church, mixing church and state. And I don't know if I've figured out the way to to train the church to be a prophetic voice about any of these things. If you can go right down the list here, plenty of people who are Christians would say that there shouldn't be gender equity or income equity. There's men and women are different and have different roles and blah blah blah. What do? Do you wait till that the generations that sort of grew up that way just die off before you address it? Like gun reform would get me in a lot of trouble. Black Lives Matter, racial justice, would get me in a lot of trouble. Reproductive rights.
Yeah.
There'd be like literal explosions in the room. The environment, disability rights. I mean, I feel like our congregation would be okay making adjustments to let to let there be some adjustments for people who need some access to help to get access to our stuff. But immigration, LGBTQ, I'll admit I'm scared off right now.
Yeah. One of the things that you said, DaShawn, that caught my ear was that we're not good at being in conversation about these things, and we're not even good about being in. And these are sort of hotbed political, topics, but the church is not really good about being in conversation about even some of the more mundane, closer to the heart stuff, like how to be in relationship with each other, how to be in healthy relationships with life partners, and how to we're not engaged in those conversations. And so maybe it's about how do we, rather than trying to push one agenda over the other, how do we get our congregation to be in communication about these things so that each side can learn and grow, and maybe find common ground and work on that, instead of always lifting up the straw man argument for the other side.
Yeah. And I know we talked about it a lot when we talk about tables. I know we talk about tables. What do you bring to a table? How do you prepare a table to. I was at a church yesterday morning, and one of the pastors did a children's message, and he had a whole lot of things on the table, and he gave one to each child who came up, and they all came and helped put something on the table. And by the time they'd all put their pieces there, you had a complete table that was functional, with spoons and forks and knives and plates and bowls and etc. And he explained to them in a way that they could understand that tables work when we all come to the table and bring something to the table and contribute. And I think that sometimes I think that the metaphorical table there, sometimes young people are left without access to the table just altogether. And then but if they come to the table, maybe what they bring is a centerpiece, and so it's not really functional, and so it doesn't have it doesn't do anything at the table. It just kind of comes to the table, just sits. So and we talk about tables a lot in our Christian faith and tradition. Jesus set a table and invited us to that table, and it's our job to go and invite others to come and share this feast, this meal, to drink these living waters, and consume this living bread. And so I think it's about access, and it's about I guess when we come to this table, does everybody have a voice at this table? How do we set this table so that it's welcoming and inclusive, and so that no one is feeling left out? Things of that nature.
I feel like the instinct today is, if somebody starts saying something I disagree with, I'll just leave. We have these commitments we make when someone joins the Methodist Church. We have these vows, right? We pledge to offer our prayers, presence, gifts, and service. The congregation offers back. We make this covenant together, but that covenant has not proven as strong as our allegiance to our political sides of issues. And I feel like, I'm pretty sure this is true, that as the church began to retreat from society, right, over the last maybe 30 years, we didn't like what was happening in society because fewer people were part of the church. Fewer people thought they needed the church. So instead of trying to inspire people to deeper faithfulness and more consistent discipleship that would in turn then change the world naturally, we went out and began to try to change laws to make people behave themselves like Christians without actually making them Christians. And so that inroads we've tried to make to get into politics has now turned around and taken control of the church. And so now the political sides have exerted great control of the church. And again, I feel like it's all a result of us not having faith that winning people to Christ and sharing Christ with people will change lives and thus change the world. It is us getting into this oppositional fight posture that now we look at opposition as evil, having an agenda, and there is, like you said, DaShawn, there is zero nuance to the discussion.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be there more than 5 minutes to get to the nuance, which we're not even willing to go to the conversation in the first place anymore. I've had people who have left churches as soon as I said something they didn't like. After Sandy Hook, we did this thing for to remember people who died or the kids who died, and something I said in a prayer during that ticked someone off. Never saw him again, and yeah, so we're a little too fragile these days, it seems. What's the solution?
Yeah, tough one, right?
Because here's another piece of it. I think you guys know me. I believe that less government is better. I believe that not because I want to fight for my freedoms, but because I want the world to change because of Jesus changing people's lives, and therefore the world changes as a result, rather than forcing it from the outside. So as the church has retreated, the government had to get big. So if the church once again can expand to do more, to be charitable, to care for each other, to take away some of the responsibility that is fallen on the government, that's going to be a win for the church, and therefore the government will be smaller. I do also realize that there are some things that are injustices being caused to someone, and if you wait around a long time to get public sentiment to change, you're going to have a lot of people who are being treated unjustly for a long time waiting for that to happen. So yeah.
Is it a sense? Did people become frustrated because they had a sense that the church, wouldn't move fast enough on a lot of these issues, right? And so we turned to trying to do it legislatively rather than, through the church.
I think it's less noble than that. I think there's something really emotionally satisfying about seeing an enemy vanquished. And so as politics has given us enemies to vanquish, that feels so good that we are not willing to do the things that Christ asks of us, to love our enemies, to to offer grace, to walk around with people that are not usually the socially acceptable ones, to sacrifice, to have a posture of humility. Those are all things that get flushed down the toilet in politics. But we then go retreat to our corners. We listen to our radio stations and our TV stations, and
but I would also a counter to that. It's difficult as a faithful follower of Christ when you see injustice happening in the world, when you see things that you believe need attention, and it's not getting attention, and you feel compelled to act. Like we've been talking about the foster care system in Pinellas County, right? And how much trouble it really is in. And so how do we not engage in that? Like how do we how do we engage faithfully as Christians and not as political parties when we see a need, or Christ puts it on our hearts to act? How do we do that in a faithful manner?
Um, I think the best explanation of that I heard, I think it was from Andy Oliver. He said that the best place to put your energy in politics is towards an issue, not towards a person. And I think the elections of people get the big headlines and the dramatic, breaking news sounds on the news, but to forget who's running for whatever, but to go and work to make sure there's affordable housing, to make sure that there's, um, adequate educational resources for kids, to make sure that there's, the foster care system has a place for a kid to go rather than having to make them sleep in someone's car or in the office until they can find a foster care family that has space for them. But that's, putting your energy to an issue is where you should work rather than putting your energy towards a slate of people, which I thought was a neat take on it. That sounds about right.
One of the
I
things
like
that
that.
I try to follow, I heard Bono say it, but I think he got it from someone else. He said, "Quit asking God to bless your ministries and your endeavors, and look for where God is already at work, because that's already blessed." And participate in the things that where God is already at work, rather than trying to get Him onto your side. And so that's one of the things that I took to heart. And when I look for things to put my energy behind, is God already working in those areas?
It's hard to, I mean, it's hard to watch um, people that I know and love who get swept into the politics stuff. I have people really close to me who will rail against, you know, everything about one side, and one side's all wrong, one side's all right at all times. Um, and Yeah, I have no idea how to break us out of that.
Yeah.
I mean, DaShawn, does that kind of stuff touch you guys on campus? I know you're in the town where this is all happening on a national scale. Do you feel any of that stuff happening?
Yes and no. Like, there's definitely like a lot of politics that just like spews throughout the whole city. And we get politicians on campus all the time, and like a lot of like, there's a lot of students here who are poli sci majors. So like, yeah, so a lot of it, a good amount of it, hits us on campus.
Do you have, uh, I mean, have you like, I don't know, gotten to see politicians that have come and talk to students? Have you seen that in person yet? Attended
I
things like
we
that?
we had a few who came to like support the protest that was happening on campus. But there are some that come and lecture every now and again. I haven't seen the lectures, but I've seen like some who have come and stood in solidarity with student protesters recently.
Um,
Well, our survey that I spoke of earlier said that these young people care about these things, and they wonder if the church cares about them as well. I'm encouraged that the young people care about these things, and so that part of the survey gave me hope that the next generation, is looking at these things, cares about them, is important to them, and some of them felt that their church, at least half of them on a lot of these thought that their church cared about that too. So you could look at it from the perspective of, well, there's a big disparity between what's important to young people and what's important to the church, but just that these people have churches in their lives and feel supported by, at least some of them feel supported by their church. It actually gave me a little bit of hope, that the next generation of leaders and faith leaders and churchgoers, that these things are important, and maybe they'll help us find a way through.
Yeah, I'm encouraged to think about, um, younger leaders. That's why I like to do confirmation camp at Warren Willis. Whenever they need somebody, I tell the kids right off the bat, my generation is messed up. We're counting on you guys to get it right. And so I'm here to invest time and energy in you guys, help you to think differently, help you to, see some possibilities, and then encourage you to say that you belong every bit as much in the church as anybody else, no matter how old you are. Well, so if we have any confirmation students listening to the DRP, shout out to you guys. We're counting on you. So no matter who you are listening to us, middle schoolers on through long ago schoolers, thanks so much for listening and hanging out with us today. Take care. God bless. See you all soon.
See you.
Yeah.